Mods can bring refreshing takes on your favourite factions, as well as brand new experiences you can't get anywhere else. But that does beg the question, what are the best modded campaigns you can play in Total War Warhammer 3? Well, let's find out. Coming in 10th place we have Crawl from the OVN Vermeer mod. Admittedly, this one is here for one gimmick only, but I find it to be so fun that I can't resist giving it a spot on the list. The Vermeer are for sure one of the less mechanically intensive factions I've looked at, but Crawl has something that's too much fun to pass up. In every single province capital you capture, you can build temples of Crawl, and in return, every single one you do build grants stacking bonuses to Crawl's weapon strength, mass, and armor, and as far as I can tell, this has no limits. So, over the course of the campaign, you can make your lord into a true terror with ungodly stats able to take out just about anything. Is this worth the effort and huge amounts of resources consumed per turn to support it? Very likely no. Is it a massive amount of work to enhance the stats of just one unit? Absolutely yes. Is it also pretty funny to see just how overpowered you can make one person in the faction? Yeah, I think so. Like I said, this is a bit of a gimmick faction, but I found that gimmick to be so fun to mess around with that I had to put it on the list. If you're going to try the Vermeer mod, just be sure to give Crawl a try. She may not be the most complicated, but you can have a pretty wacky campaign if you really lean into it. Coming in 9th we have the host of the Raven Queen from Albion. Albion is a bit of a weird faction, as they have a lot of mechanics, but none of them are all that complicated to use. The racial mechanics are essentially the geomantic web and some unit upgrades, but the host of the Raven Queen has something a little more interesting. They essentially have the same mechanics as Marcus Wolfhart, excluding his collection of heroes, and this time it's against Chaos. You increase the faction's belief in the leader over time to unlock more frequent shipments of more advanced units at the cost of Chaos taking a disliking to you. Add on the hostility mechanic that causes them to attack you whenever you expand, and it's an intense campaign where you really feel like you're taking the fight to Chaos and facing challenges at every turn. Marcus was always one of my favourite campaigns back in the vortex of Warhammer 2, so something similar in Immortal Empires with Chaos is a great idea. It's a little bit more on the challenging side of things since you'll basically be under attack from Chaos pretty much all the time, but it's still a lot of fun and one of those campaigns where you'll come out to the other side with a bunch of barely surviving stories of beating the odds. In 8th place we have the Sigmar's Heirs rework for the Empire. More specifically, I'm talking about Khal here. And I know, Khal is the most overplayed campaign in the history of Total War, so why would you want to play him again just because of some mod? Well, dear viewer, allow me to introduce you to Provincial Recruitment. This small mechanic simply introduces unit variety depending on where you recruit your units in the Empire. This unit variety is some new units, but normally small twists on existing units, but nevertheless, it encourages you to either travel your army round when recruiting to get the best army the Empire can field, or tailor each army to a specific region of the Empire to make the most of their gimmick. We all know that once you reach the endgame, you just build the exact same armies every single time, but with this mod, you're encouraged to think a little bit more each time you make a new one. Add on the decent number of new units added with the mod, and you have a fresh way to play the Empire all over again. Yes, they've been reworked like 3 times now, but why not give the mod a try for rework number 4? Like I said, Khal is extremely overplayed, but why not maintain tradition whilst also giving it a fresh coat of paint? At number 7 we have the Bretonnian overhaul, and we're talking about Rapons here. I never miss an opportunity to talk about how much I dislike playing Bretonnia. The whole horse focus and their wonky mechanics combined with their tediously boring mainland campaigns are enough to keep me far, far away. Well, the Bretonnia overhaul fixes nearly everything, and by playing Rapons, it's pretty much a clean sweep. The overhaul fixes a large number of issues like their economy, making it a lot more balanced and encouraging a variety instead of just farm spam. Chivalry now actually does something, and the Green Knight is a worthwhile reward for a job well done. Plus, it makes vows a lot easier to handle, which relieves a massive headache. But what makes Rapons the go-to lord of the bunch is actually the tech tree. Instead of the usual confederation for the mainland, which doesn't really make much sense for her, she instead has one all about conquest in foreign lands, making her campaign feel a lot more complete. With this overhaul, she is the definitive version of herself, and most likely the most fun you can have playing Bretonnia. You still have to get over the horses spam, but if you can manage that, you'll have a great time. In 6th place, we have the Phoenix Court mod for the High Elves, and honestly this applies to any of them, but if I had to pick, I would probably go with Alariel. It's honestly amazing to me just how much a single mechanic that's not really that complicated to use can spice up the gameplay of a campaign, but the Phoenix Court does just that. It's essentially a reskinned Tower of Tsar from the Chaos Dwarves, but gives you something new to focus on building towards when playing as the High Elves. They're meant to be one of those vanilla ice cream factions you play whilst first learning the game, but once you're ready for some chocolate chips, this mod is a great addition. The addition of a new currency gives you something else to work towards, and the seats and interactions between them make progressing the mechanic extremely engaging, as you really want to pick and choose thoughtfully to make sure you make the most of the combinations and stacking effects later on. The top level seats could have been flat Confederation options, but they take things a step further to give you the option to simply vassalize alongside picking up some powerful bonuses for your own faction. It's a single, simple mechanic, but the level of polish here honestly outshines the original Tower of Tsar and makes that look like a ripoff of this. In 5th place, we have Clan Scurvy, a fairly recent mod covered, but Clan Scurvy has already become my go-to example when I'm talking about reworking the Vampire Coast. They may not be part of the faction, but they function exactly how I would like them to. They cannot take any settlements and instead focus on using undercities to support their faction. This means they just roam the world, attacking whoever they want and targeting the rich to live that pirate life. It's such a no-brainer for a pirate faction that it's kind of shocking the Warhammer 2 dev team didn't think of it. Aside from this one change, you're also getting an authentic Vampire Coast campaign, but playing as a rat. You have shipbuilding on all your armies so you can recruit as you sail the seas. They even have a totally unique roster full of undead rats and a massive amount of gunpowder. Am I saying undead is a good thing? Hell no, but it makes them stand out in the sea of rats this mod adds. If you compare this to the Vampire Coast, it's not that big a change, but because it's coming from the Skaven, it gives them a whole new playstyle they've never had before, and improves upon it. In 4th place, we have the God Slayer overhaul for Daniel the Demon Prince. The other factions like Bretonnia, the Empire and the High Elves may not have had the best campaigns of all time, but at the very least they were playable. Base game Daniel, however, is basically unusable with just how bad his faction is. The only mechanic you have is Daniel and his demon building. Now sure, he can use all the demons of chaos, but so can Archeon, no big deal. This rework may not be able to totally fix him since he's kinda broken to the core, but it elevates him to a faction worth playing. First of all, he has this thing that's known as actual mechanics. Alongside his glory collection, he can also make use of souls, but instead of the usual gifts of chaos, he instead uses them to upgrade his unique horde building. You still basically put in all of your resources into Daniel, but you're benefiting the faction a lot more by doing so. He can also use the unholy manifestations from Be'lakor for all kinds of buffs and bonuses. The dedications at the end of the glory tree are now vastly improved, with each of the branches offering substantial bonuses to their realm's units, making them a lot more tempting than just going undivided every single time. As well as this, pretty much every demonic part has been tweaked to bring them up in power and make endgame Daniel feel like a real force to be reckoned with instead of a giant pincushion. There's a bunch of minor changes alongside this, but the final result is making him feel like a real faction that's worth playing. I would honestly recommend anyone give this mod a try. It takes what is undoubtedly the biggest failed experiment since Troy and makes it a massive amount of fun to play. In 3rd place, we have the Sultanate of Araby. The Araby mod is one of the most impressive modded factions I've ever seen. They flat out feel like a DLC, and if they ever do get added, the bar will be pretty high to justify picking up paid content instead of sticking with the free mod. Their racial mechanics are decent and encourage you to really stick to a certain playstyle to maximize the bonuses you get, but my favourite of the 3 factions is for sure the Sultanate of Araby. Led by Jafar, the faction has something I absolutely adore, and that's direction. His campaign sees him completing a grand multi-step questline that first takes back his homeland before taking the fight to potential invaders. It's another one that can be quite challenging as he starts off with his mechanic working against him, but the rewards you gain when you're back on top are well worth the effort. It's something so simple, but it really makes your campaign have constant momentum as you have that set goal in mind instead of just doing the usual battling whoever's closest. It forces you to leave the comfort of your home base to take the fight to factions you'd probably just ignore unless they came knocking first. It encourages you to see more of the map than usual, and it's just flat out fun to play. Add on the market and the caravans and you have one complete feeling faction despite their main mechanic being essentially a checklist. It's just proof that simple mechanics with a clear focus make for great campaigns just as much as something far more complex. In 2nd place, we have Cetra from the Tomb Kings Extended. I could have really chosen anyone from the Tomb Kings Extended mod because this rework is truly fantastic and revitalizes a faction that have quite literally been left in the dust. I went with Cetra basically because he's the man, and also because his reworked faction effects let him make use of most of the new mechanics better than anyone else. Speaking of which, basically everything the Tomb Kings can do has been tweaked or overhauled in some way. The entire canopic jar system is improved, allowing them to earn them faster and spend them on more things to keep the currency moving instead of simply stockpiling it for the late game. Unit upgrades allow you to really maximize the power of their always enjoyable roster. The addition of subjugation when defeating their final settlement may not seem like a big deal, but for Cetra, it's everything. And of course, the real start of the show is the new pyramid system. Before they were landmark buildings you simply built and reaped the rewards. Now they open up entirely new building menus where you can easily spend hundreds of thousands of gold on a single one, but are rewarded extremely handsomely. This fixes the issue most campaigns have where you run out of steam 50 turns in because there's not much to do aside from endless conquest. With this, you can be busy for well over 100 turns, and if you wanted to build them all, you are looking at a true marathon campaign. Cetra is simply the best at this with his ability to make massive money from vassals and confederate his fellow Tomb Kings to be the one true ruler of the desert. Oh, and the mod also adds a ton of new units, so you also have that. This is another mod everyone should try, and it really elevates the faction to relevance once again. And in first place, could it really be anyone other than the Lord of the Dead, Nagash himself? Honestly, it's pretty close between this and the Tomb Kings Extended, but in the end, Nagash takes it because of the sheer number of things he has to play with. First of all, his settlement taking system with the Places of Death encourages him to take settlements carefully to ensure he can make the most of them, rather than just hoovering up everything he comes across. The obscene size of these special settlements lets him maintain his faction with a much smaller empire, which makes for a refreshing campaign. His questline is also extensive and sees him travelling all over the map, taking and defending settlements whilst performing rituals. This all culminates in him achieving his true form as Lord of Undeath and vassalizing every undead faction on the map. His true form allows him to build up an exceedingly powerful horde and recruits everything from his exceedingly large roster wherever he goes. Speaking of which, he can make use of all undead units regardless of their faction, with some capacities in place to keep things balanced. There's really too much to talk about with Nagash because there is just so much to do. Quite like the Chaos Dwarves, your first campaign as him, you'll freak out the sheer number of things to do, but once you get used to it, it can be one of the most engaging and rewarding campaigns in the game, modded or not. It's another mod where the DLC would really have to put in some work to take its place as the definitive way to play the Lord. But that's my list of the top 10 modded campaigns in Total War Warhammer 3. Did you have something you think should have made the list? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 rankings, then check out this video of my top 10 mods of 2024.